I'm going to be talking about the Sheldon Tapestry Maps, a digital reimagining of the Tudor landscape. Now, I'm not sure how many of you noticed the tapestry map of Oxfordshire when you were having your coffee, but it was out there in Blackwell Hall, and it is a thing of stunning beauty and a very popular thing. That actually is the Worcestershire tapestry map, which for those with long memories will remember was displayed, I think, between 2015 and 2019. Now, when Helen first invited me to speak on this subject, I had a completely different talk in mind. And all will become clear why I had a different talk in mind, so please bear with me. What I'm hoping to do is give you a flavour of the tapestry maps, what they are and what they might be. And that's the exciting thing as far as I'm concerned, and I think fits in very well with the theme of this event today. So, let's have a look at the history of the tapestry maps. The Sheldon Tapestry Maps, here in the Bodleian, we have 3 of a set of 4 such maps which were produced for a chap called Ralph Sheldon, who coincidentally lived at Weston House in Warwickshire. Absolutely nothing to do with the Weston of the Weston Library. It's one of those lovely coincidences that happens every now and then. And he commissioned these tapestry maps in the 1590s, there or thereabouts. They were woven in wool and silk, and you can see here the dimensions roughly 13 by 20 feet, or for those who prefer metric, 4 by 6.5 metres. So they're big things. The Gloucestershire tapestry, or a part of the Gloucestershire tapestry, was bought at auction by the Bodleian in 2007. The Oxfordshire and Worcestershire tapestries were bequeathed to the library in 1809. Oxfordshire is currently on display in the Weston Library, as I hope you've all seen. The tapestry's provenance is extremely well documented, and the identities of the individual tapestry makers, they are uncertain, although we do know that a chap by the name of Richard Hicks is likely to have been heavily involved. And here you can see Hicks is referred to on the Worcestershire tapestry. With a name like Hicks, he could have been English, he could have been Flemish, we don't know. But the assumption is that Hicks was probably, in modern parlance, the project manager for this scheme. So you can already see we have a riot of colour on our hands here. And the next slide I want to show you, look at that. Let me just talk you a little bit through what we're seeing here. This is Weston House. The significance of this tapestry, the colours, the background colours represent counties in 1590. So here, this orangey colour is Oxfordshire. You can see the roll-right stones here, for those of you who are familiar with it. We have Warwickshire in yellow, Gloucestershire in green, and then all these detached parts of Worcestershire in pink. And this is the Worcestershire tapestry map, remember. And for those of you who are familiar with this area, here we have the Four Shires stone. It's on the A44 between Chipping Norton and Morton in Marsh. You can still see it today, although it's a much more modern version, but you see this huge stone with the 4 adjoining counties engraved on each of the 4 sides. If you're travelling there now, you think, well, what's going on? There's only 3 counties here. And it's this little lobe of pink, a detached part of Worcestershire, which is now in Gloucestershire, which generates the 4th county. So that's a little bit of social and local history for you to give you a context to what's going on. In terms of the landscape today, that's where the tapestries were commissioned for. A place called Weston House, which doesn't exist anymore. There's nothing there. You can access the area. This is a lovely little lane running through parkland. It's a gated road, so there are no signs. There's a gate here and a gate here. It's a single track road. There are no signs at either end of the road, but it is publicly accessible. It's lovely up there. You're quite high up. but you don't really see anything. There are a few places with Weston in the name. There's a Weston farm, I think, and another thing with Weston related to it. The great thing about these 4 tapestry maps, though, so Oxfordshire, Warwickshire, Worcestershire and Gloucestershire, is that Weston House would have appeared on all 4. It would have been the centre of the world if you were visiting Weston House and had the opportunity to look at the tapestry. And this is a kind of mock-up, it's not a great image, showing the 4 tapestries side by side. The only one which is cartographically intact is Warwickshire, and that one is at the County Museum in Warwickshire, actually in Warwick, which you can just go and wander in and see. It's a lovely thing. You can see Oxfordshire down here, the bits of Gloucestershire that survive, and Worcestershire. And let's go closer to home. You'll see this image on the postcards that are doing the rounds today. This is just to give you a flavour as to where we are locally. This is actually a reasonable attempt at depicting Oxford. You can see the castle here on the mound to the west, Folly Bridge, Magdalen Bridge. Most of the rest of the settlements are, shall we say, more imaginary. So if we focus on Ellsfield up here, Cuddesdon down there, Cowley here, each of these smaller settlements all have an individual design, but they're not necessarily a depiction of the village in question. We're talking about thousands and thousands of villages over 4 tapestries, and they all have unique designs. So, what do we already know? We know they were commissioned by Sheldon. We know they were designed to be hung at Weston House, and the tapestries remained there until their dispersal in 1781, at which time the house fell into disrepair and was abandoned. All 4 maps, however, were heavily based on the cartography of Christopher Saxton. Christopher Saxton is effectively the first modern English map maker, and he mapped all the counties of England and Wales in the late 1570s. He did Oxfordshire in 1574. And so if there's cartographic information on Saxton, it appears on the tapestries. It's quite clear there is a link between the two. However, the tapestries are roughly 8 times the size of Saxton's maps, which are about so big. So there's a huge increase in scale. The other challenge is 2 maps show north at the top and 2 show east at the top. And I'll come back to that in a moment. And Sheldon's friends and relatives' houses feature prominently on the tapestries. So they are bits which don't necessarily appear on Saxton's maps. So that's how you get a flavour for that. And the Saxton maps look a bit like this. This is the second map Saxton made, which is Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire and Berkshire all combined. The first one he did was Norfolk. And you can see it shows, there's Oxford there, settlements, rivers, woodland, and you can just about make out a circular park there. That's what's now Blenheim in Woodstock. And all of these features are transferred onto the tapestry maps, as are the hills you can see here. The hills are in the right places, but don't necessarily look like the hills they're depicting, but it gives you the right idea. And there again, going in close, you can see Weston House in great detail. You can also see the design of the tapestry, how intricately woven it is. So it's a thing of great beauty, I think you would agree. There's an awful lot going on there. So moving back, here is the area around Oxford. You can see going out towards Wychwood Forest there, what was part of Berkshire until 1974 in this yellow background, and a lot of suburban Oxford. Dotted around here, you'll see as separate villages. So there's an awful lot going on. The oversized trees are quite wonderful, I think, but and they're probably worth a different study altogether as to whether or not you can identify specific species of tree. Anyway, what about the Bodleians' link with the tapestries? Well, Richard Gough, who many of you will know, he was the man who bequeathed the tapestries in 1809. They were transferred to the V&A in London for safekeeping in 1913, and there they remained for some considerable time. We were able to buy Gloucestershire at auction, and once this building was reconfigured and redeveloped, many people will remember it closed in 2010 and reopened to the public in 2015, we realised there was a huge wall, which you've seen out there, a huge tapestry-sized wall. And so the library commissioned a firm in Milan to build a case, and the plan was to put the tapestries into that case. So the Oxfordshire and Worcestershire tapestries returned to the Bodleian in 2012, and we had to start planning. And this is where we created a link with the National Trust. The National Trust have a huge tapestry restoration place at Blickling in Norfolk, and they won the contract to repair and renovate the tapestries. It was a £180,000 campaign. We looked long and hard at various different conservation partners. We specified the type of conservation treatment we needed, devised a display and preservation plan. The idea was to understand the physicality of the tapestries and to lead to additional scientific research, and also look at how we might share the knowledge, bring these tapestries into the public eye. Here's some action shots from Norfolk. I look quite a lot younger on that one, wandering out there. We had a great day just watching the working process. And you can see it's all very, very rural. There's some of the National Trust team in action and some cleaning of the tapestries. And not only did we do work in Norfolk, but part of the deal was to take the tapestries on tour. They went to Belgium. And this is a place called De Witt in a town called Mechelen, halfway between Brussels and Antwerp. The best tapestry laundry service in the world. And it was a thrilling occasion. The tapestries were placed into this chamber. It got very steamy. You couldn't see inside. And beneath this floor, there were little holes, and liquid permeated through, and they were collected. This was the first bit to be collected, which you can see is a kind of almost Guinness colour, running all the way down to a kind of elderflower cordial at the end there. And I was just showing how the tapestries were being cleaned. They were effectively brown tapestries when they went to Belgium. After a day at De Witt, they were colourful tapestries. It was a fantastic experience. They went back to Norfolk for a bit of finishing off, as you can see there. And one of the beauties of it was that the tapestries were largely illegible. And using Saxton's maps, we were able to recreate a lot of the text, successfully identify all the towns and villages, which was a nice thing to do. And the National Trust had people there who could do it. So if you go and have a look at Oxfordshire, you'll see various place names have kind of been added where there are holes, certainly towards the west of the tapestry. They've done a good job there. And this was all installation time. The lady here is Ksenia Marco from the National Trust, who ran the tapestry workshop, and here she is with her sort of staple gun, getting the background in place onto which the tapestry was mounted. There was loads of scaffolding. There's Ksenia stretching things out in the right direction, and this frame is actually on a little track, and the next slide will show you what the track does. This became quite a challenge. We managed to get the tapestry installed fully 45 minutes before the doors opened for the first member of the public to come in. And there's the very relieved crew pushing it into place. Yeah, I think people familiar with the library will recognise Virginia and David Howell, who was the former head of conservation. Virginia now has that role. And these two, Ksenia and Pip from the National Trust. So, Worcestershire was installed in Blackwell Hall in March 2015. It was replaced by Oxfordshire in June 2019 ahead of the Talking Maps exhibition, which we ran here in the room across the way there. And the Gloucestershire tapestry actually appeared within the Talking Maps exhibition because that's quite a lot smaller. The Oxfordshire tapestry out there, enjoy it whilst you can because it is scheduled to be taken down in September. We're not sure what's going to replace it, but it will be being removed, unfortunately. I'll just say a little bit about that in a moment. In terms of promoting the tapestry maps, we had a one-day symposium in 2019 from Weston House to the Weston Library, the Sheldon Tapestry Maps at the Bodleian. It was held in this very room. Pre-COVID, we used to do daily talks. The map room staff would appear at 11:30. It got very competitive, didn't it, Debbie? Trying to get more and more people to each talk. It was a great fun thing to do. Post-COVID, we've had volunteers who do talks about the tapestries twice a week. We've given tapestry talks to places like Bodleian Library Staff Conference, Oxford Open Doors, the Oxford Seminars in Cartography, Warwickshire Tapestry Festival, Worcestershire Historical Society, and the Guardian featured quite heavily when we were installing the first time. Maeve Kennedy, the arts journalist from the Guardian, spent a lot of time here and in Norfolk coming up with a story. But this is why we're taking the tapestry down. You can see these are colleagues or ex-colleagues from our conservation department. They're monitoring the colours. And despite it being quite dark out there, the colours are fading. Ever so slightly, but in the tapestry's best interest, it makes sense to give them a rest. So that's why we're taking Oxfordshire down in September. So what are the next steps? Our plans are partnering with Factum Arte, who many of you will know, based in Madrid. The previous Sunderland Symposium here, we had a lot of Factum Arte involvement. Donna and Jamie will mention them as well. The plan is to scan all the surviving tapestries and fragments. So that's our three. The Warwickshire tapestry in Warwick. There are two fragments of Oxfordshire, the bottom right corner, which are held at the V&A, and there's a significant part of Gloucestershire in private hands. Everybody is agreed to do this. And then we'd like to infill the gaps. There's a lot of gaps, and this is something quite imaginative. We've already captured all of Saxton's maps covering the area, and I'll show you how I think this is going to work. And this has been done already in partnership with Factum. And we'd like to do a kind of digital stitching everything together. So Factum have a lot of experience with tapestries, and I'd like to thank Adam Lowe for sending me these slides showing some of the work they've been doing in Spain, stitching up and actually digitally improving damaged tapestries as well. So Factum have the ability. This is how they do it. So you can see this large tapestry. There's a camera on a rig here. It's invasive capture of the data. So what are our aspirations? We'd like to do an online surrogate. We'd like to be able to beam the tapestry onto walls or onto the floor as a kind of light show. And we'd like to try and recreate what might have been seen at Weston House back in the Tudor era. And this is the sort of thing I have in mind. So the bottom half is an image which you're familiar with. I've shown it a couple of times already. That's the tapestry area of Oxford, showing Oxford. And if we go slightly to the north, this is the Saxton map. And I quite like this one because it shows where I live on there. So it gives me an excuse to get onto the tapestry map at long last. So combining the two together, that's to the north of Oxford. For those in the south of Oxford, same sort of thing. That would be a nice thing to do. Obstacles, well, obviously, as is often the case here, finance, and also the north-east conundrum as viewed here in Gloucestershire. This is exactly the same place. This is Berkeley Castle in Gloucestershire. East is at the top. This is exactly the same area on Saxton. Saxton has north at the top. And flipping that, this is just slightly further south, and you can see it's a challenge to get the information right. Here we have the top of the tapestry pointing east, and here is the north on Saxton. So how that's going to work is a challenge that we'd like to discuss with Factum. Here are the 4 tapestry maps joined together again. These are the 2 pieces down here which are at the V&A. So it's an area of South London and Surrey, and a lot of decoration. And what we'd like to do is move from that. Forgot to mention it, look at that stunning white horse on there. Pointing the wrong way, and it looks like a horse, completely different to the white horse on White Horse Hill. That's how you can see that the tapestry makers didn't actually see the real thing. We'd like to move from that to something more like this, where we've got kind of superimposed a Saxton background and we've got the V&A pieces there. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have to say on the matter at the moment. Feel free to write down your questions, and I will join Donna and Jamie later to discuss things further. So thank you very much, and that's that.